Give a roll call, please.
Mrs. Cooper,
Here.
Dr. Gatachu,
Here.
Dr. Green,
Here.
Mrs. Heater,
Here.
Mr. Huron,
Here.
Mr. Reichard,
Here.
Mr. Wagnitz.
Here.
Thank you. In Terry's absence, we'll move on to appointing a temporary board secretary. We have a motion to approve. Laura Reno.
I'll make that motion. I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 1.4, minutes. We have a motion to approve the minutes from the prior meeting from September 12, 2022.
Motion.
Second.
Comments, questions, discussion? All in favor? Signify.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Move forward to 1.5, minutes from the October 3rd, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting. Motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Superintendent's report, Mr. Mathias.
Okay, I have several items. First of all, we did have an incident today at Liberty Valley Intermediate School. What happened was we had a paraprofessional came into the building early, about 7:30 or so. She comes in to walk the halls, went into her classroom, which is on the west side of the building. So if you're facing the building from the road, it would be to the right side. When she went into the classroom, she saw glass over on the floor over by the univentilator. Went over to check it out. There's a cloth drapery there, pulled it back, and saw it's a double pane window. The windows were shattered. Now, they weren't out, but it was spidered and shattered with a hole in the middle. She immediately went down to Mr. Gump, got him. He came up to the room, and you could tell pretty quickly that it looked very much, in fact, was a bullet hole. When he looked at it further, found that it had come in through a window, actually had hit a door, a wooden door on the opposite side of the room, and then the actual bullet itself had ricocheted and was laying on the floor in the classroom. Of course, there was broken glass. This was before any students were there. In fact, we don't actually know exactly what time it happened. Mr. Gump immediately notified school police. That was Officer Hunter, who at the time was over at the middle school. He came over immediately, called me right away. I immediately went over, kept communication with the district office if there were any needs. When we got there, of course, Mr. Gump by that time had already secured the building. Students had been coming in just after that, got them in the building, kept them away from exterior doors and windows, of course, along with staff. And as is normal now, you're almost permanently on lockdown once everybody's in the building because the doors are locked. We got there, we of course investigated inside, immediately went outside to try to assess what, if any, threat existed, and what was fair to say at that time is we did not know. What we did know, and Mr. Gump had found this out by communicating with some of the custodians who were in the building, that a staff member had been mowing grass there on Saturday between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. Did not recognize it. And when you see this window, this is something that's recognizable. The whole window is spider shattered. But that staff member did not recognize that on Saturday. Clearly it had happened before 7:30 a.m. today. So we really don't know when it happened. It could have happened Saturday afternoon. It could have happened Sunday. It could have happened at 6:30 this morning. We didn't know that. And at that point in time, we also were unaware if any threat continued to exist. When you look out that side of a building, the building, there's a playground there. There's then a fence row. There's also a small shed there. Then there's cornfields and then kind of undulating hills going off into the distance. And we just did not know if anyone was there. So, but before I got there, the police and Mr. Gump had notified the Milton State Police to get on site. 2 officers came, and also Officer Brian, who normally covers the primary school and the high school. He came on site. And what we attempted to do, what was really our priority at that point, was making sure that there was no external threat. The state police did that. They canvassed the area, came back with a determined, and by the way, this took some time because they had to come from Milton, then they were doing some investigation, and they were checking out the potential threat. Roughly 9:45 or so, they reported back that they felt there was no threat outside the building. We had been doing some preparatory work to dismiss students and staff out of the building. Had the district office staff communicating with the bus contractors, and we were staging the buses for the Liberty Valley pickup off-site. And that happened at McDonald's, it happened at the Hilltop, and it also happened on Klein Road. And the reason for that was before 9:45, we did not know if we had a threat. So the last thing I was going to do is bring anyone on site when it was still an open question. That is also why we held back on any external communication, because as is human nature, when you hear something like that is going, many people will come, especially parents, are going to come to get their kids. And before we knew that there was no threat, I made the judgment that we were just going to make sure the scene was secure before we did that communication. At 9:45, that went out. So Jeff Ryan, who works here as a technology person, he made sure the calls went out to Liberty Valley parents. We got information out to the media about the dismissal, and then we scheduled the dismissal for 10:15, trying to give parents at least a little bit of time, to get back home or babysitter or whatever that entailed. So I stayed on site. By the way, I discovered that cell phone and texting service is not particularly good out there. But I stayed on site. I just always feel as an administrator that visibility and those types of things is important, that you be there so parents and students and bus drivers can see people there who are, obviously Mr. Gump was there as well. Teachers were excellent at keeping things under control and organized. And then didn't really get back to the district office till after 11, and that's when I crafted a press release and got it out the best we could. I did discover as we debriefed today that my idea of a press release is to go on the website, and that's of course because I'm old. I've heard of a thing called Facebook and didn't think to say, hey, put it on Facebook, but so that was an oversight on my part. But that's what happened. The state police are investigating. They brought an evidence team in and collected evidence. Also, our in-staff police are continuing to investigate as well. We have reached out to our police to have a circle the building tomorrow morning before kids get there, just to make sure everything is okay, and hopefully we're back to normal tomorrow. Any questions? Sure.
I never got any phone call from my sister, Dunkin' Donuts, going on at school. My grandmother is the first person on the call list. She was never called.
So ma'am, before you leave tonight, can you leave me with your name and number, and I'll make sure that gets corrected tomorrow? Could you please? Thank you.
Any other questions, comments on the report from Mr. Mathias? Members of the board? Okay, Harry, anything else?
Yeah, several things. First of all, you have Dr. Need on your agenda for later tonight to hire a superintendent. Her and I have met several times and have very productive meetings. She's asking me questions. We're getting her information, getting her ramped up so when she's here to start, she hits the ground running. So that is going, I think it's going quite well. As you know, you have a land sale or a purchase of land right across the road here. scheduled with the town of Danville Borough. That is supposed to close by November 15th. Please know that I continue to reach out to the town to see where they are in the process. Their process includes where they have to get court approval. When municipality sells land, they have to get approval by the court. Shannon Berkey last week reported that they still have no news. So we are trying, we are pushing, but I'm not hearing anything yet from Danville Borough. Two additional things. I do have a report in a second, but on the agenda there is a typo. It is Exhibit 1122, and the typo is the third bullet down. It's Forensics Co-Advisor Richard Ludwig. It says $3,710.70. It should be $3,210.70. Please make sure you make that correction before you vote. And then I also have a presentation. We do have Mr. Wilson back here today, so he's going to be driving for me. So we have had discussions here, and in my presentations, I've tried to present to you data, okay? Data that you can use moving forward in your deliberations on how and where you're taking. And you have from time to time asked me to do a presentation on what we refer to as the career pathway model, okay? So in order to do that, I have to refer, but I also want to give you a mindset of where this came from. And I'm doing that because you're going to hear me say things that most school people don't say, okay? And I'm going to frame it in different ways. When Central Columbia put this model in place almost 10 years ago now, I had a lot of experience. And there was a kind of an impetus to make it happen. And that impetus was our high school principal is leaving and we were bringing in a new one. High school principal was Jeff Groshek. Jeff had been a teacher at Central. He had been a student. He had been an athlete. He played for me and all of that. And we shared some things. And what we shared was kind of this passion. There we go. This passion for trying to make the school the best we possibly could. Now, you have to understand, this was probably midlife crisis time for Harry. You know, I'm looking at 6, 7 years, the end of my career, and I'm trying to do something that I think will make a difference. And I had a partner in Mr. Groshek. So we did a lot of research. I kind of said to him, go out and find the best model you possibly can, bring it back, convince me. By the way, one of the hardest things to do is convince me of something. Convince me, and then we will run together. We'll let you do the implementation. I will support you the best way that I can. We'll get the board to support it as well. And one of the places we did research was the book called Good to Great. A Stanford researcher went out and did research on what made companies great. And one of his quotes is this, that good is the enemy of great. And he comes right out and says, the reason we don't have great schools is because we have good schools. The reason we don't have great companies is because we have good companies. And what he does is he urges you to look beyond that, to do the hard work. So part of this message tonight is, this is hard. This is challenging. There's stuff that has to get done. And I want to be clear what that is and how you have to do that. Go ahead. Here's another famous quote. Those of us who are coaches refer to this all the time. If you are not getting better, you are getting worse. So one of the things that you have to look at is, does status quo work? And many people in the business industry or business area believe that is not true, because what happens is people pass you by. So I would encourage you to continue to look to get better. Go ahead. So why high school reform? And that's the way we looked at it. We were reforming our high school. We had a unique opportunity to do that. He was entering the position. I was willing to support him. Let's go. The first one you've already heard me refer to. We Mr. Groshek and I, his assistant principal, Chris Snyder, many of his teachers had this desire to do the best we could for our students. And if that meant that we had to go down a different path, so be it. We were willing to try that. These other 4 things I'm going to give you a little detail on in a second. And the second one is one of these areas that I'm going to say things that most school people don't talk about. And that's free market principles and how the public school system fits within the free market. Because we often don't think of that, especially school people. We like to think of our, our curriculum and our instructional thing, and those people that are out there, making money. That's different than us. And it really isn't. There's a thing called the rigor and relevance framework, which I'm going to explain to you. Since the 90s, we would hear a person by the name of Willard Daggett do kind of motivational things and talks and so forth. And what he came up with in his group was quite relevant to us. Other Ways to Win is a book that was written by Ken Gray and Edwin Herr. They are both Penn State University professors. They have both since retired. If you want to read a book that changes your life and changes the way you think about schools, this is the book. There have been 3 editions to this. The first one came out in the late 90s. What this refers to, when you look at that title, Other Ways to Win, is they have done a lot of research where they are convinced that the American society believes there is one way to win. Go to college. And they're saying there are many, many other ways to win, and their research shows that. We had Dr. Gray actually come speak to us at Central. We had him do in-service. We had him do parent nights, all of that. And he gave us permission to use his research tools. So when you hear me say to you, we collected data, we followed up on things, it was because we had research tools from the very best. And it's also important for you to hear me say, it changed the way I think. Most people go through life and never change the way they think. They simply listen to people with whom they already agree. And when you do that, you learn nothing. This changed my mind. I used to think one thing, I read this book, it's like, oh my God, there's another way to think. And then finally, the research that is out there on school violence and mental health. Now, this has evolved dramatically recently. If you are my age, the first incidents where this became relevant was Columbine. That's how old I am. So there was a lot of research done. Why did Columbine happen? Of course, since then there have been numerous other tragic events, and we simply know more and more than we used to. Go ahead. Next slide, please. Okay, so free market public school principles. Why do we have public schools in the United States? Because Thomas Jefferson, yes, Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence, believed that we needed, if we were going to have this experiment called the American democracy, where we were actually going to let people vote for their leaders, we were actually going to let them participate in the economy, we had to educate them. And we had to have a system for that to happen, because before that, it was all based on how much money you had or what class you were or any of that. Remember, this was the group of people that broke away from the Kingdom of England, broke away from that. And what they were getting at was you needed to have an educated public. This is also the Founding Fathers, the people whose primary economic advisor was Adam Smith. Now you should look that name up, okay? Adam Smith was the father of conservative or free market economics, and this is what the Founding Fathers believed in. They believed that in this country, you should get as far as you can based on your own talent. If you were good at something, if you were smart, you should be able to be successful, and nothing should hold you back. So when you think about that, think about the school system in the community. Who pays your taxes? 60% of your revenue comes from people right around here who pay their taxes. Yes, it's homeowners. Yes, it's people who earn an income. But the highest property tax payers in your school district are businesses. Businesses. Okay? What do they expect in return? Now, I want you to understand, if you own a business in this community, you employ people, you bring them in to make things or produce things, which you're then going to turn around and sell to make money for you, what you need are talented people who can do just that. And if you're one of those people over the last 20, 25 years, what you've been looking at is a demographic trend that does this. And they are terrified because where's their help going to come from? Where's their workers? What they expect in return for giving you those tax dollars is that you do something that helps them. And that's keep in mind that their value in this community is critical to the long-term health of the community. You need businesses who are strong, who hire people, who pay good wages, who then, as part of that, pay taxes. If you don't have that kind of diversity, if you don't have a strong local economy, then what happens is that filters away, there's less people who are hiring people, there's less people to work, and it just goes further and further down the tubes. And by the way, do some research on what happens when one company is dominant in a community. Yep, you need the supporting services, but it can slip away. For 25 years, I've sat in Chamber of Commerce meetings. I've been on the Chamber Board. I've been on the Columbia Alliance for Economic Growth Board. I was on the Workforce Investment Board. And you sit in these meetings with business leaders and listen to them. And they will tell you what I just said. They need healthy, quality, responsible, trained employees who can come in there and do the job and help them produce their goods and make their profit. They need people who are responsible. They may need people who show up on time. And the message to schools is that's serious. You have to teach that as part of what you do in schools. So if you've never sat and listened to a business and industry leader, you should do it. And what should be happening in this school right now is meetings. Come in and tell us what you need, and we will listen. I like to say that I was the guy who went to Chamber of Commerce meetings and actually listened. Next slide. Here's one you're not going to hear most people say when you're running the school. Treat it like a business. What does that mean? It means you actually analyze the data. You focus on measurable outcomes. So for the career pathway model at Central Columbia, we looked at measurable outcomes. It meant, yes, we are going to rewrite curriculum to include courses that have career focus. You as a board can ask for that as a measurable. Please bring us those types of courses on a regular basis. You can ask things like those core academic courses, how are they linked? Here's the famous question. You're sitting in algebra class and the teacher's showing you how to do something. And here's the question. Why do I ever need to know this? That's the question. And the teacher gives you the blank stare, right? Responsibility. Or you'll need it to learn something else. No, it does matter, and it should be written into the curriculum how that content connects to real-world things. You should ask for those. I want to see courses coming before me that have those items. Maximize and optimize the use of resources. A month or so ago, I did an enrollment report for you. Your staffing is one of the most critical resources you have, and I'm going to ask you the question, are you optimizing, are you maximizing the use of that resource? At Central Columbia, we actually looked at the number of students taking courses. And there's a famous example of when we started this model, we had a teacher who, I'm not going to try to modify my courses. 2 years later, half-time. Half-time. Because the numbers, we looked at the data, the numbers did not support that person having a full-time position. 2 years later, guess what? Got it in gear. You know what? Maybe we will start to develop some career-oriented courses, and guess what happened? Kids liked it. More kids taking the courses full-time. So we adjusted our resources, both in terms of personnel, in terms of technology, and the other things based on our numbers. Train and motivate staff. I just gave you an example of a way to motivate staff. You may not like it, but if you're looking at it as a business model, hey, let's get the kids in the courses, and if the kids don't want to take your courses, then you need to rethink. It's not the kids' fault. You need to rethink how you do it. I'm going to talk to you in a little bit about something that we needed to train the teachers on because we needed that higher order thinking. Apply the economies of scale. In this region, one of the challenges that we have is that we do not have enough students to justify every school having everything. There just isn't the economies of scale to make that happen. So what you have to do is you have to focus and prioritize what is those most important things for your kids, make those part of your curriculum, and make sure those are available. And don't try to do everything. The biggest one that I think catches people off guard, or maybe not if you were paying attention, is marketing. Central Columbia marketed what we were doing. And this is the story I used to tell. I want the doctor who's being hired at Geisinger and coming from Florida, or the engineer who's getting hired by PPL and is coming from California. These are people who are bright, who are moving to the area, who have access to data. They can look, they can look things up and what data is available to them. When they come into this community, I want them to say, I have to live there. I have to. I have to send my kids to that school because look at what they're doing. Look at their test scores. Look at their opportunities. Look at how they're connected to the community. Look at their facility. Look at all of it. I wanted them to say that, and so much of what we did was focused on our clients, never heard kids called that, right? Or our potential clients, the family moving in from Florida. They gotta live right here. So what we did is we reached out, you've already heard me say this, to business leaders. Business leader, hey, I'm the boss. I'm hiring you for a job. You're gonna say to me, hey, I'm moving into the community, what's the best school? I want you to say Central Columbia, or in this case, Danville. That's what I want you to say. We reached out to higher ed leaders. You're gonna vote on a guaranteed admission program here a little later. Guess who started that? I wanted to reach out to home buyers. I wanted to reach out to potential new students and parents. Real estate agents, we did tours of the program so that when someone asked them, where's the best place to buy a home, they already knew. Go ahead. Okay, shifting gears now, rigor and relevance framework. Now I know this is hard to see, so I'm going to explain this a little. The left-hand column, right here, any teacher who's in the room will recognize that as basically Bloom's taxonomy. And what that means is the more you go up, the deeper the types of learning, or the more intense the types of learning. So you have remembering and then understanding, then applying, analyzing, evaluating, and Bloom would call it synthesizing. So the higher you go, the higher order of thinking. And this is the Willard Daggett stuff. What Daggett did was he said, you know what? There's also, when you teach a lesson, how that gets applied in your lesson. Is it knowledge in one discipline? In other words, you're teaching a math concept and you just ask them to bring it back to you in math. You apply it in discipline. Apply in a discipline. You apply across disciplines. The ability to write. Can you write for artistic purposes like poetry? Can you write for technical services like a science lab? Can you do all those things? Apply to real world predictable situations and apply to real world unpredictable situations. And because you have the two scales, what you get are 4 quadrants of learning. And what we at Central Columbia shot for were quadrant D lessons, meaning high levels of Bloom applied in real world situations. And Jeff Groshek made as a requirement that every teacher in the high school did a 1 quadrant D lesson every month. You would call us in, we'd come in and watch it. You would then write it into your planned course, which would go then to the school board. But what we did was we purposefully elevated the instruction into real world areas. Next. Other ways to win. Did you know that more than half of high school graduates are not prepared for college level work? This comes from Ken Gray. The way he studies this is he looks at colleges that require remedial courses. Oh yeah, we'll let you in, but you have to take this math class or this English class. It's not for credit, it's remedial to get you up to speed. It's also measured, and how he would measure this, and we did this, was the number of credits earned in the freshman year. It's a very powerful measure of preparedness for college. The national average, 13. 13. Central Columbia, 31. Next bullet shocks a lot of people. Only 1 in 6 college freshmen, so picture the college freshman class, at 4-year colleges get a job in their major field of study within 6 years. 1 in 6. And nationally, a little more than only 1.5 actually graduate. The financial toll to students, parents, and families is staggering. We're having this debate all the time. Pennsylvania is the 2nd highest state in the country for student loan debt. It's pushing $40,000. Unless you voted for Biden, then it's $30,000. That was supposed to be funny. Yeah. I guess it really wasn't funny. Student loan debt is crushing our youngest generation of adults, and it's because not only do they have to borrow because college costs are so high, but also because they're not prepared. So they're borrowing money for something that's doing very little value. The number 1 major in U.S. colleges for college freshmen, undeclared. The number 1 major. What's that tell you? Went off to college, don't know what I'm doing. Don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. Costs money. Costs money. Many schools ignore, or this is Ken Gray, okay? This isn't Harry, it's Ken Gray. Many schools ignore or do not place sufficient focus on what he calls the academic middle. He is very clear. Schools are great at the upper level. Schools, because of federal law and special education, are great at the special needs kids. It's the academic middle that schools ignore. His recommendations, high school, particularly the senior year, have to be rigorous. Sorry, students. The senior year has to be rigorous, and that can mean many things. It can mean, yeah, you got to take a math class. Yeah, you have to take a science class. We're not letting you back off in the senior year. For certain students, it could mean, yep, we're going to let you go take that internship. We want you to work with somebody in the community, real world experience. Get out there and learn. But senior year is critical. There has to be a conscious career development component. We consciously teach math, we consciously teach English, we consciously teach social studies, but what we don't do is consciously teach career development, the one thing everybody's going to do. Schools need to focus programs and parent education. By the way, huge parent education. Okay, the number one influencer of kids' majors? Mom. Mom. Not guidance counselor, not teacher, mom. By the way, that ought to make you happy. Okay? But mom needs to know what she's talking about in terms of a career. So schools need to focus programs, parent education for the academic middle. It's not just you have to go to college and so forth. Next slide. Okay, school violence and mental health research. Kids need to see a future for themselves. If they're going to be mentally healthy, they're going to see school with value, their community with value. They have to see a future. It can't be that I'm coming to school and, okay, I'm learning how to do this trig problem, and then I'm going and learning how to conjugate, and then I learn a couple of French words, and no, what's the future? How does it connect for me? Students need to be engaged, and I would absolutely emphasize that word, with something in their school, their lives. It could be a teacher, it could be an academic program, it could be a coach, it could be some sport, it could be friends, certainly could be religious organizations, but for a kid to be mentally healthy, they have to be able to engage. Go ahead. So why this model? It makes the curriculum relevant and challenging for all graduates, not just some, to provide accurate and helpful information on the various career fields. There are stuff out here in this community. By the way, many kids, you talk to a lot of kids, they will tell you, I want to leave, I want to get out of here. Don't like it. Unlike 2 years later, most of them are like, pretty good. Danville's pretty cool, okay? And that's true. That's true everywhere. We have a great quality of life here. It's awesome. What kids need to know is how do I connect to a career? Can I be a mechanical engineer in this town? By the way, the answer is yes. You just may not know it. You may not know where. Can I be a veterinarian in this town? Can I be a bus driver in this town? Yes. Okay, there's lots of things I can do in this town. To provide each student with a specific individualized career plan to transition effectively upon graduation. Individualized. Every one of these students is different, and they're different in two main ways. One is academically. They all have their own skills and talents, and they are different in terms of their interests. So their aptitudes and their interests. When you hear many people talk about career development, they only focus on the second one. Interests. Hey, what do you want to be? What do you like? Right? Oh, I like puppies and kitties, so I want to be a veterinarian. And then you find out that it actually involves, sticking needles in and, surgery and doing all that kind of stuff. And then it's like, not sure. Specific individualized career plan focusing on aptitudes as well. To offer a credible strategy for helping more young people stay engaged in high school and emerge better prepared for success, better prepared, and provide opportunities and focus for all students, including the academic middle. Go ahead. So, at Central Columbia, what was the career pathways? It was college prep for all. College prep for all. Career prep for all, career development for all. And on my next slide, I'll start to explain. Go ahead. So what did that mean? College prep for all meant all students were required to take the college prep sequences in all the areas to graduate. Yes, every kid had to take 2 years of a foreign language. Every kid needed 4 credits in math. Every kid needed 4 credits in science. By the way, those credits were actually also prescribed. It wasn't just pick and choose. It was physics or physical science, chemistry, biology. You had to do that, every kid. And by the way, you may say, oh, there's some kids that can't do that. We didn't think so. Set the bar high. They get there. They actually get there when you believe that. Career prep for all. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot a very important point. The sequences that a kid could take could be and often were accelerated in a customized way. Now, what does that mean? She's good at science. She's good at English. She can accelerate in science, go as high as she wants, and not English, and she can accelerate in English and go as high as she wants and not science. It's not prescribed, whatever you're individually good at. Career prep for all meant all students took a minimum of 4 credits in their primary career pathway and 2 credits in a secondary pathway in order to graduate. All those courses included relevant career-based activities. They included technology. They were specifically written in particular areas. And essentially, all it meant was you were focusing the elective system. Okay, this isn't math, it isn't science, and an elective, and now it's focused on something based on your career. Career development for all meant a K-12, yes, we started in the elementary school, curriculum process including relevant activities aligned to the career ed and work standards. Remember my first presentation? I showed you the Chapter 4 requirements that you're required to put in place, and one of them's career ed and work. You have to teach those standards. You can't ignore them. You have to teach them. So we embed them. All students completed an individualized career plan. When you read Ken Gray, that's where you're going to find that, the ICP. All students completed courses that included personal budgets and finance, tax prep, and ethical technology use. Critical skills for our youth. Go ahead. The career pathways was a curriculum development process. You'll hear me say that over and over and over again. It is not about facilities, it's not about personnel, it's not about function. It is about career development, and it does 3 ways. The core academic courses, think biology, algebra 1, American history, okay, think those courses. They were, by the way, and this is what you can ask for, you should ask for, were revised to include Quadrant D lessons, you know what that is now, and activities, and career-based activities and content. There's no reason that the algebra teacher can't tell the kid why they have to learn that and how it applies to the real world. That's all we're doing. Still teach it, just tell them how it applies to the real world. They also included high level of assessments, critically important, writing activities, also critically important, and technology. Now we're talking the electives. A development and modification of the elective courses to provide in-depth career content. So it's not biology, it's some other course in science that's an elective. You got to tie it to careers. You just write it to apply to careers. It's not hard. It's not costly. And a series of required courses that we called futures that included the individualized career development process, personal finance, those technology things, and all of that. Those were embedded in those required courses. Here, you've started that. It's called the GPS course. Go ahead. See, Central Columbia High School did not add staff for the implementation of career pathways, but rather...
Mr. Mathias,
Yep.
we appreciate your passion for career pathways. I'm going to ask you, please summarize and
Yep.
conclude.
So we did not add staff. We did add staff with 339. Go ahead. Here's the results. Pretty good summary here. Academic performance up, student attendance up, student prep for college up, internships up, changing majors down, saves money, student discipline issues in the school were down, student mental health down, enrollment up, use of taxpayer-funded space up, alumni support up, local business involvement in the school up. Tell me if you don't like any of that. Next one. Now this is what I'm getting at. This is important. Danville High School takes a survey. It's called the PACE survey, and you did it last year. This is last year, 21-22. This is before you implemented career pathways. This is the old system. 34% of your 10th graders and 35% of your 12th graders, notice how close that is, so it means it's reliable, stated that they never or seldom feel that their schoolwork assigned is meaningful or important. A third. A quarter of your 10th graders and your 12th graders stated that they never or seldom enjoyed being at school. 1 in 4. 40% of your 10th graders and 36% of your 12th graders stated that they often or almost always hate being in school. I just showed you Central's results. Here's your data. 24% of 10th graders stated that during the past 12 months they seriously considered attempting suicide. 18% made a plan. 13% of 10th graders and 10% of 12th graders actually attempted suicide. They need to connect to something in school or the community, and I think this data is something you should be paying attention to. Next. We did a report on AP courses. 148 students are taking an AP course. That's 23% of your population. That's basically where you've been for the last 6 years. 306 seats in your high school schedule take AP. That's 7% of your class time. Keep in mind, look at it as a business. Today, you spent $69,000 to educate kids in the high school, today. Of that, $54,000 was invested in students not taking an AP course. So this goes to, what are you investing that money in? Go ahead. Last 20 years, 2/3 of your graduates attend a 4-year college, means that 1/3 are not. 1/3. What are you doing for that 1/3? Next. This is what you have put in place. This is the career pathway model that is in effect for only the 9th graders. Now I'm going to remind you, you're in school 24 days. 24 days for one class. So you've spent roughly 1% of your instructional time this year on career pathways. This is in place now. It is board approved. And what I'm going to suggest is, next slide, that you focus on teacher expectations and your culture, that you ask for meaningful input back to you on curriculum development. Ask for that. Make sure that that happens. That you implement it sequentially. What does that mean? You don't need to see senior level classes yet, because it's only in the freshman year. So get the freshman classes in place, then 10th grade, then 11th grade, and so forth. Mental health issues. I just showed you data. It is critical that you address the mental health issues. I am convinced that this model does that, but I do want to say something regarding that switch to a 7-period day. I am not convinced that a teacher in a class having high expectations hurts a kid's mental health. Teachers should absolutely push as high of expectations as they can, higher level thinkings, make the kids right, make the kids perform. They will. They will. So if you're asking me, an 8-period day gives more opportunities for kids. So please, as you move forward, set measurable targets. Ask for the courses. You want to see them. Make sure that kids are following up and taking what they need. And I would absolutely look at the opportunities for kids through that extra period in the day moving forward. That's what I would do. I can offer other thoughts or answer.
No, I wanted to check and see, do we have any questions? You okay with audience questions, Mr. Mathias?
Of course, yes.
Anybody in the audience have any questions for Mr. Mathias? He has a extensive history, clearly in career pathways. If you have a question, now's the time. Anybody from the board? Oh, I'm sorry.
Back that up, please. This was the PAYS survey that was sent to me when I started here in the summer. Yes. So I'm giving you my feedback that I believe, you just heard me say it, a teacher pushing a kid to academic rigor, in my opinion, is not the cause of mental health issues. So you hear me saying that?
Serious mental health issues, but yet threw away everything they had academically, reduced the day to 7 periods a day.
and you heard me also say that I would go to an 8-period day. So those are my recommendations as I look at it. I think we're agreeing on that. But I also believe that embedding that in the career pathway model is the way that that can actually work and move you forward. And we're in that transition process to career pathways. So what I'm saying, let's ramp that up. Let's make that even better.
Any other questions, audience, board, comments? Mr. Mathias, thank you, appreciate it.
I know I took time. I
That's okay,
appreciate
no,
that.
I understand, I'm just being respectful. I know there was an expectation before that we limit presentations, but it was valuable and we do appreciate it, thank you.
This is my last chance.
I understand.
Hey, my report's done, thank you.
All right, thank you. Public comment, agenda items only. I know we have a group here that's going to speak. Girls? I think all girls? Come on up. Sorry, we only have one chair. But let me look underneath. Is it? There you go. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so we're here on behalf of our drama and our musical this year. So as you all know, the recent drama director's resignation has set us back in our spring show process. Because it's already October, a show and even auditions should be planned at this point. Our next step is to find a qualified director and team. Although this is a timely process, we urge you to find a replacement efficiently and as well look outside the district. We have extraordinary candidates that should be heavily considered because of their interest and prior experiments and their commitment to our theater program. There are many resources from the surrounding areas, including places like Bloomsburg Theater Ensemble and other theater departments. We really would like to have all necessary resources by December. Any further delay than that will interfere with our spring sports, and speaking from personal experience, I'm also on the lacrosse team, and I know Coach and our director has always tried to keep conflict out of the way, but a musical is a very hefty time requirement, and with how late we're starting, it's almost nearly impossible to not have any interference. So we would just like to get it rolling as soon as possible so we can limit that interference as much as possible. It's also important that we start as soon as possible so other kids can participate in any other extracurriculars they wish. And many schools around our area have already begun their spring musical process, which kind of shows how far behind we are. And we're just here today to ask for your help in providing us with resources for our program, which is extremely important to many of our students at the school.
Okay, next.
You talked a lot about us being invested in our school and finding activities, and this is our activity for a lot of kids, and it's really important to us, and we've shown that previously. The parents and children of this program have invested time and money and are eager to provide additional assistance. Recently, we raised $160 at the Homecoming Carnival with one advisor. Parents plan to start a booster program as soon as we get started on our show process. Parents and children, including those not here, have expressed interest in fundraising and providing for our program, but we can't do it alone.
So, as a senior, this news is very surprising and disappointing. We need to act fast in starting the process for our show. With difficulties of the past 4 years, like COVID, we expected a stable and fulfilling drama club. The closest theater opportunity for many students can reach as far as an hour away, but kids should be able to look within their districts for these opportunities. With this being the only theater opportunity for many kids, it's important for us to overcome this challenge and smoothly transition to a new director and team.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Any other public comment? Agenda items? Can I assume the three of you are speaking for the group in the back then? Okay, so we just refer to them as several interested in the drama club. Thank you. No other public comment? Okay, we'll move on. Item 5.1, approve consent agenda items. Are there any consent agenda items that we would like removed from that segment of the agenda? And I'm going to ask that 11.4, the board will take action to accept the resignation of Jordan Haravi as drama director at the high school effective September 25th, 2022, be removed as a consent item. Anyone else on the board have a consent item that they would like removed? Okay, the board will take action to approve the consent agenda items. The consent. Okay. If that is mine, I will speak without a microphone moving forward. The consent agenda items include 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, 11.5, 11.6, 12.1, 12.2, 12.3, 12.4, and 12.5. We have a motion to approve.
I so motion.
Second.
Roll call. Questions, comments, discussion? Roll call, please.
Excuse me.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognitz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 6.1, consent.
I just have a question. May I ask a question? Okay.
Into one voting item. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, I just have a question. So I know I can see on 6.3, 6.4, 6.8, 6.9, it has for renovation project for the primary school on all of those. I know Liberty Valley, but what was happening at the primary school? What was the funds for?
Okay, at the primary school,
It seems like a lot of money. I didn't know what it was for.
well, they combine both of them. They just consider it Liberty Valley or the primary school.
Okay.
Basically, it was renovations to the faculty, and we expanded the cafeteria here at the primary school. So I think the total was just under 200,000 for the work that was done here. I think it was like 188 or something like that. The bulk of the work is Liberty Valley.
Okay, but when you say expansion of the faculty room,
Well, it was renovation in the faculty room. What they did, it was an expansion. They removed two of the restrooms into a storage area across the hallway, which basically was an expansion to the room. The room didn't grow, but the utilization of what we did inside did when we removed the restrooms.
And what was the purpose of that?
At the time, that was going to be an office, I believe, and a conference room, way back with the former superintendent. But
Who was going to be in those offices, and was that the one that we were moving the Renovation into,
Yes,
into primary?
yes. And then they elected not to move and not to change the offices.
So
But
we
at
s-
that point,
Do we know why they
at that
made that
point,
decision and how they made that decision?
no, that, I don't know how they made it or why they did it. I just carry out what they made. At that point, the wheels were already started, contracts are already signed, the renovations had already begun. That's not the time to stop a project. I
Right,
think we all learned that from the fiasco in Monroeville.
right,
So we were kind of locked in at that time
right, and it's no fault of yours,
to
but I was,
proceed.
yeah.
So,
Is there a way that we could get a figure for what was spent specifically for that, just for our knowledge?
for that one room, I don't know that you can. I think it's all encapsulated in that, in the price, and I think it came to like 188,000
For the room,
For the building.
Yeah,
for the building?
for the whole building, for the complete project.
We can show you around then.
we had asked this question before, and I remember, I don't know if Mr. Matthias was here or not. About 183, I think, plus another 34.
Just for the primary school?
That's what was reported.
Right,
For offices, for administrators that aren't there now?
correct.
So, Mrs. Willoughby, maybe you could tell, do the teachers at least have a faculty room back?
So yes, they do have a faculty room. It is larger. And of course, the expansion to the cafeteria, I have to purchase tables, but that was not in this year's budget.
Right.
So I do plan on utilizing that space. Right now, we kind of have it as a flex space, but hopefully in the future, we can utilize it appropriately and spread kids out a little more and give some more space to our students.
Okay,
One thing I want to point out, because we're dealing with the item at hand, is that none of this, from my perspective, should change whether we approve this or not. 'Cause
No.
these are services rendered by
Correct.
companies, items that were approved by the board, that followed through on them. This is not the fault of Mr.
Right.
Perkins. It's not the fault of any of the contractors we're paying.
right,
And
and,
you vote as you want to vote.
right, oh, and I agree, no, but I was just wondering what it was for, because I didn't know they were having the way it's worded, primary school renovation project, but it's just a shame that that money was spent, by whoever authorized it. I'm assuming former administrators. That's a lot of money.
I think it's a good discussion moving forward on proper
Yeah.
utilization of space, because we have a new superintendent coming.
Right,
We have a new business manager, and is this something we're going to follow through on in the future? Is this
right. Yeah,
how to finish that sentence?
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any other comments, questions before we move forward with this? We had a motion and a second, correct?
Yes.
Roll call vote?
Dr. Gatachew?
Yes.
Dr. Green?
Yes.
Mrs. Heater?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Rakerd?
Yes.
Mr. Vognitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart?
Yes. Consolidated them. So we're just going to do a motion to approve them all at once?
That
Consolidate
was
into one voting item.
Yeah, they're done.
So they're done.
You're moving on to seven.
That's what I thought. Okay, very good. All right, move on to 7, out-of-state trip. Board will take action to approve the out-of-state trip to Chincoteague Bay Field Station, Wallops Island, Virginia, for 17 students and 3 adults, leaving May 21st, 2022, returning May 24th, 2023. This trip addresses AP and NGSS standards. The cost is approximately $400 per student and $300 in transportation costs.
I motion.
Second,
I'll second.
questions, comments, or discussion?
Are we allowed to go with them? Seems pretty cool.
Roll call vote, Laura?
Dr. Green?
Yes.
Mrs. Heater?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Rakerd?
Yes.
Mr. Vognitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Dr. Gatachew?
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart?
Yes.
Dr. Matthias?
Sorry, that was already a consent.
No, actually it wasn't.
I'm just confused, that's
I
why I
see.
stuttered.
Nope, you're right, okay. 7.2, Danville Middle School Drama Selection.
Excuse me, there's
Yes.
a question.
It must just be the typo. It's May 21st, 2023, I assume?
I'm looking at one of the principals, help me out.
Yeah.
The date
I
on
gotta
that.
say, that's already passed.
23,
Okay.
okay, 2023,
Yeah.
thank you.
So
What's the point in that? Okay, that's why I didn't want to answer, like, what?
Really? It's 23 on there, it's
Okay.
22 on here.
23.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah.
Good question, thank you, yes.
We want to revisit and revote?
I'm like, I must be going blind.
Anybody want to
Does the
change
board
it?
feel the need to revisit and revote that, understanding that that was just a typo?
No.
We okay to
Oh,
move
we're
on?
fine with that, but I just wasn't, I was seeing things like, really?
No, you're right. No, you weren't seeing it. Okay, 7.2, Danville Middle School Drama Selection. The board will take action to approve Sherlock Holmes, the Baker Street Irregulars for the Middle School Drama Club production.
No motion.
Second.
Discussion. Laura?
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Rakerd,
Yes.
Mr. Vognitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes?
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes.
There's nothing for 8 unless.
Curriculum Management Report, anyone? Relations? We'll move down to number 10, Finance. Finance Report.
Those reports are attached for your information. I mentioned to you in the past that I have a kind of a quick hint on show you how to read these things. Does anybody want to see that, or have I talked enough tonight?
Anyone looking for another report or presentation?
No problem.
Do we need an approval on these?
No.
Okay. Wendy, you have anything you'd like to add? Okay. Bills for payment, 10.3. Board will take action to approve the bills for payment for September 9th, 2022 through October 6th, 2022 as presented.
Motion.
Second.
Questions, comments, discussion? Call vote, Laura.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Rakerd,
Abstain.
Mr. Vognitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Berkheimer One Source, 10.4. The board will take action to approve Berkheimer One Source to print and mail or Act 1 applications at a fee of .3963 envelope. Motion to approve.
I motion.
Second.
Second.
Questions, comments, discussion?
Mr. Rakerd,
Yes.
Mr. Vognitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 10.5, Consulting Services of Conrad Siegel Actuaries. The board will take action to approve the proposed consulting services of Conrad Siegel Actuaries for the 2022 ACA Employer Report at a cost of $6,000, American Care Act, I believe. Additional fees, if we use them for other areas beyond the scope of services, would be as follows. Consulting actuary, $350 per hour. Benefit consultant, $300 per hour. Associate actuary, $265 per hour. And actuarial benefit analyst, $195 to $225 per hour. Do we have a motion to approve?
I motion.
I second.
Questions? I have a question. When we do this, and I'm not sure which of you I direct this to because of the transition here, and I'm familiar with Conrad Siegel. I know they're a great company. Do we put this out as a request for proposal, or do we just seek a proposal from them because they've done work here before? Is this competitive or is it not competitive? Never.
The price has not changed.
It's not
But
competitive.
we didn't do a competitive request for proposal. We don't really have anything, I don't believe, in policy that mandates at any point say every 3 years, every 5 years, you need to do that. That's
Correct.
solely at the discretion of the board.
Correct, and especially for services.
Right, okay. Got it. Okay, any other questions on this? Laura?
Mr. Vognitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 1, 2, and 3. Did 11-4, we pulled from consent. The board will take action to accept the resignation of Jordan Harabi as drama director at the high school effective September 25th, 2022. Do we want to do motion to approve and second before we discuss, Mr. Mathias?
Usually that's how
I think
Robert's
that's the
rules,
best
yeah.
way. Okay. All right, motion to approve the resignation of Jordan Harabi.
A motion.
Second. We have confirmation she actually was approved as the drama director at some point back in September.
When you did the whole
I
list.
saw the list that said extracurricular.
Yes.
Would we refer to this as extra or co-curricular?
We refer to the list as extra.
Okay, good enough. So we have a motion to approve, but we don't have a second.
Correct.
I'll second. Questions, comments, discussion? Seconding only to move if it needs to be moved. Questions, comments on the resignation?
Well, I mean, the one comment I will make is, according to her resignation letter, it appears that one of the biggest things is the fact that she's requested additional money to do the job, and because of the time commitment that it takes to do a musical, which is equivalent to a highly competitive athletics sport, maybe even more so than some of the sports, and that she's not being compensated comparably to coaches in the sports. And so I think it would be important for us moving forward, in order to retain quality people, to give some serious consideration for paying people who are putting time commitments at the same level of competitive sports on the same pay scale as people who are coaching competitive sports. And I know there's been a bit of comparative analysis around the surrounding districts in comparison to what she was getting versus what other districts are getting, but from my understanding, the comparative analysis doesn't take into account the full picture, because oftentimes they're getting more than one stipend in that context. And so I think it's something moving forward, even though I can't fix this problem short term and prevent her from resigning, because I know she's well loved by the children, that, and if she was able to do this, that, you know, this would be moving forward instead of struggling to find a way to put on the musical. So we should give it some serious thought. And I know it has to be balanced out with the financial bind the district is in. But I think we should demonstrate that we value the arts and academics as much as we value sports in this district. And that's my comment. I don't have anything further to say at this time.
Other questions, comments, discussion? I'd like to say, but I wanted to make sure everybody else had. We know we face financial challenges. When we review coaching salaries, don't review arts. I think we send a bad message. I think we sent a bad one with this when it was done. Maybe on the board we did, I don't remember. This is prepared, so this is not throwing criticism at anyone. They all deserve comprehensive review. I know we can simplify this to, we have financial challenges, we can't do these things. Down the backs of kids, passionate and showed up tonight, miss this very easily and say, budget, it's not something we can afford right now, and I think that's just, right now what we have in front of us is a resignation. But we also have a request to consider compensation. So act on the resignation request because we are in a bind and in a hurry. But I think we also need to improve operations. No, there was a transition. certainly cognizant of that. We also know that Mr. Mathias said that there were some things done with this matrix way back in May or June that never came to the board. Put something in front of us in September, kind of pulled a rescue mission for us, which I appreciate, which on its face seemed fair at the time. I think you did everything you could with the situation. We did everything we could with the situation, and who ends up getting hurt is the kids. So I'm not giving you any answers, but I thought these are things I needed to put on the record. I think that from my position personally, I want some assurance that this is something we're going to look at going forward, knowing, as you said, we can't fix it tonight.
Yeah.
We need to move.
We need to value this in the same fashion that if, say, the football coach left mid-season and then there was no head coach, because for a lot of these kids, it's the rough equivalent of that. And I'm not sure that we've shown them as much respect as they deserve in this context. And so we need to get this figured out as quickly as possible.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I love football, and I love boys basketball, and those who know me know that. But as a system, as an organization, we need to treat all of it the same way.
I agree.
And I think we failed.
So we'll get an ad out tomorrow?
I had something I wanted to say about that if I could, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
I'm going to ask one thing, and I don't like putting the superintendent hat on, but in this, I'm going to ask. As opposed to putting a deadline on this, could we say applications will be accepted until the position is filled, so we can look at them as they come in, and then a screening of applications date, so that we don't say the deadline is 3 weeks out. If we get people, we can just bring them in and really expedite this.
Right, that's no problem.
Okay.
But I'm assuming the board, if you get a qualified applicant, wants to see that as soon as possible.
That's, I think, where I was going, yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
sure.
What about,
And if that's totally out of character and not possible for the administration, I understand. I just wanted to bring it out as a possibility. It just could move it quicker. Go ahead, Dr. Green.
what about actually taking a look at the extracurricular positions that we have and doing a cost analysis based on the amount of time that these individual positions put in, and seeing how that would map to?
I'm going to answer that because I think that's a great idea. Because one thing I like about the coaches matrix is it is based on how many weeks and how much time they spend. I think that's great. I think it's well done. But when you apply some of these other positions, I don't really think it's going to upset it that much because they don't spend as much time and they don't meet as much.
Right.
In musical and drama, they do. Forensics, they do. But there are a lot of clubs where they're not meeting very often. So I don't really think it's going to have that great an impact on a matrix because they just don't spend as much. They're not designed that way. They're not supposed to.
So if you have someone who's meeting with a club once a month, that means there's 12 total days that they get credit for, which is 2 weeks into
2
the
weeks.
matrix.
Yeah.
Which is much better than looking at it as, you know, the season is the entire year, because the amount of time investment compared to, say, the musical. And I will guiltily admit, I did every musical in high school, and so it speaks to my heart in order to, you know, the idea of the kids losing out, especially during senior year. That seems like a really big deal to me.
I can't sit here and say, because I just don't know.
Yeah.
That wasn't done. That may have been done by someone. When as Mr. Brookhart said, when I got my hands on it, the problem with when I was given was that there were winners.
Right.
I remember I reported that to you.
Yeah. So this is not in any way a slight on what you've done so far. I think you've done a really good job of trying to navigate us through this, but I think there's a bigger underlying issue here which we're going to need to address. And it may be something that falls in our future in superintendent's lap instead of yours. But I just want to reiterate the urgency of doing something for them, because I would have been pissed if my senior year if I'd missed out on, you know, my last opportunity to have that experience, because it is a relatively unique experience.
No intention on the administration's part of not doing a musical.
Sure, I understand.
Charge ahead as soon as possible, and when we get you a quality candidate, you'll see them.
The last thing I would like to add, though, is that just to apply the coaches matrix to all of the positions doesn't work, because some of them don't meet enough. Like you said, it could be 2 weeks. So just to say, let's move them on to that.
Sure.
And that's why we can't just solve this. That's why it takes time, because it is complicated. It's not simple. So I think we should move forward with the vote unless somebody else has a question, comment, discussion of any type. We ready to move on? All right.
Sorry. Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Dr. Itachu?
Yes.
Dr. Green?
No.
Mrs. Heater?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Reichard?
Yes.
Mr. Vognitz?
No.
Mr. Brookhart?
No. Pass? Yes. Okay. Thank you. We're going down to 11.7, the new hire, superintendent. Action. The board will take action to approve Dr. Molly Need as the superintendent of the Danville Area School District starting November 14th, 2022, and continuing through June 30th, 2027, at an annual base starting salary of $145,000 and pursuant to further terms and conditions outlined within the employment agreement between the parties.
I motion to approve.
Second.
Comments, questions, discussion, anyone? Call vote, Laura.
Dr. Gatachu?
Yes.
Dr. Green?
Yes.
Mrs. Heater?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
Before I vote, I just do want to make a comment. Hiring a superintendent, which is the only person in a school district that reports directly to the school board, is one of, if not the most important thing a board director does for their community. This responsibility is so important that the state of Pennsylvania has a statute that requires the board to send a formal letter to each school board director notifying them of the upcoming board meeting that includes the superintendent hiring. Mr. Mathias built an interview process that this board agreed to. This process was compromised and not followed by the board. As a result of this, I was excluded from the decision-making process to select our superintendent. The decision to exclude any board member from the decision-making process is disrespectful, irresponsible, and hypocritical from other decisions made by this board, and frankly wrong. Therefore, in good conscience, my vote is no.
Mr. Reichard?
Yes.
Mr. Vognitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart?
Yes. Dr. Need is here tonight, obviously. Dr. Need, I'm sorry I didn't get to talk to you earlier. Mr. Clauser is not here tonight. I didn't realize I was going to take this position until a few hours ago. Would you like to say anything? I guess I put you on the spot. You don't have much choice.
You talking on the mic?
First test is how to operate the mic.
Failing.
There we go. All right, now I've passed. I just needed a remedial course. Well, I would like to thank the Board of Directors for your faith in me. I'm really excited about the opportunity and will certainly just want to share that I will work very hard and do my best to serve the students here in this community, the families, the staff, and all of the members of the Danville community. I'm an alumna of the Danville School District, a mom of Danville School District students, and an active community member. I love this community, I believe in this community, and will certainly do everything in my power to serve you all very well. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Need.
Thank you.
Item 11.8, consolidate items 11.9 through 11.23. The board will take action to consolidate 11.9 through 11.23.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any questions, comments, concerns about the consolidation of these before we vote?
Just a note, I think Johannes has some other duties that he has to take care of, so he may be leaving us.
He's gone.
Yeah. He's taking care of someone in his family who's not doing great.
Questions, comments on 11.9 to 11.23? Second, Laura, I think this is yours.
Okay. Dr. Green?
Yes?
Mrs. Heater?
Yes.
Mr. Huron?
No.
Mr. Reichard?
Yes.
Mr. Vognitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Six, all right, here we go. 12.6, expulsion agreements. The board will take action to approve the expulsion agreements for student A and student B effective October 11th, 2022. Approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any questions or comments? I would advise the board. Questions are vetted before public.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Yes.
Mr. Vognitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes.
I do want to announce, I forgot to do this at the beginning of the meeting, the board did meet in executive session prior to the meeting to discuss this matter, which of course is confidential, dealing with students.
13.1, the board will take action upon the recommendation of the acting superintendent to approve the bus driver lists for the 2022-23 school year as presented, pending the receipt of all required clearances and documentation.
I so motion.
I'll second.
Questions, discussion?
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Reichard,
Abstain.
Mr. Vognitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Anything that we missed? We're ready for reports. Matthias, okay. We have CMAVTS, which is Columbia Montour Tech. Mr. Cloud is not here this evening. I will say briefly, if there's anyone that has anything to add, the VOTEC, I believe, is moving forward at this point with their building project. I know they approved the construction management group, so that was probably a sign that you'll see some things start to time coming with the VOTEC, so I'm sure Mr. Claus will have some things at future meetings on that. CSIU report, Dr. Katachu, I believe, just went off the call. Anything additional on the CSIU you're aware of? I'm not, okay. EITC report, Mr. Huron, do you
There's
have
nothing to
anything?
report.
Nothing? Okay, thank
Not
you.
this time.
Head Start report, Mr. Reichard, anything?
Something simple, but October, of course, is Head Start's Awareness Month, which you can apparently see. They made some cards and stuff. And I want to thank us for supporting the past 57 years. Head Start is scheduled to have a focus area to monitoring reviews sometimes during a school year. We will receive a letter 45 days in advance of when it will be done. And on Thursday, October the 13th, we will have a parents' training on 3- and 4-year-olds developments and then have some fun for the kids. About it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reichard. I'm the CS Trust Report rep, and we have not met. They meet quarterly. I believe the meeting is later in October, and once we do so, I'll bring it back. You'll find an awful lot coming out of those meetings. Generally, except one time a year, they establish your rate. We'll get back to you on that. Board concerns and items for the next meeting agenda. Do we have anything that we would like to address now? Obviously, Dr. Need is in the room, so she will be here, not for the work session, but for the actual meeting, I believe, in November. Starting at that point. I know we had some discussions about comprehensive planning. We talked about doing that sometime after the 10th, so Pat Merrill is going to coordinate that for us, I believe.
Pat and Tracy Kroom will be working with Dr. Need to set up a meeting.
Perfect, okay, great. Other things that you would like to bring up tonight? I have one or two that I want to bring up. If there's others, you can interject before I get started. I see something's being, I got that one.
Okay.
Wayne, just real quick, I just want to
Yes.
just pass along, for the kids in particular, but whoever was, part and parcel to putting these together for us, this is important little trinkets, I call them, but they're I know they're heartfelt and they're special, and I want to say thank you for the teams and the folks that put that together. Thank you.
And I wanted to say something too about that, but I didn't know if I could or not since I'm new to all this and he kept going. But if you could just let your teachers know too, thank you for all they do because I know how hard they work and it's not easy what they do. But again, it just really, I mean, you can't beat that, right? So please tell them that, you know, we appreciate everything they do. Thanks.
Yeah, great.
Hey, you got a special one.
I got drawings.
Hey, look, I got
I got fingerprints.
They're all awesome.
I got
names. Thank you, Linda.
Fantastic.
Butterflies with all their
Thank you.
names.
Okay, I have a couple things real quickly. One is, I brought this up, and I did talk to Mr. Mathias and ask if he had any problem with me talking directly with Ms. Reno, because I do like to run things through the superintendent. It's about the students we have students on north side of Route 11 that live very close to the middle school, but they're bused, and then we have students on the east side of Route 54 that live similar distance. Both are hazardous, could be termed hazardous routes, but they're not bused. There's 33 up in that quadrant, I call it, between 54 and 11 east and south that don't have a bus, and then there's 6 on the other side down, I call it the old armory area down toward FQ Hartman Field, which is no longer FQ Hartman. And they're not bused either. And we know that 54 runs under a tunnel where West Mahoning and Route 54 intersect. So the state sends things out, and we were able locally to determine that we felt that it wasn't hazardous for kids to walk, but we know a lot of the kids don't walk. It gets kind of complicated. So I talked to you about that, and it's something we said we'd continue to revisit because most of the kids we know don't walk that way. I'm just requesting that, and I'm not asking you to do this now, but as we move forward in planning later in the year, next year, and we see what the options are. We only have 39 kids in the whole district that are walking, is that correct? Out of well over
Yes.
2,000.
It's between 39 and like 45, depending on the
33 of them are walking across a hazardous route. It just seems like maybe there's a solution. Without disrupting what we have now, understanding the challenges of busing and shortages and all, could we at least have some kind of a report moving forward? Ask you to do that in a real short term, but if it could done. Thank you. That's one. Let me see if, see what else I have. We had a track coach here last week,
Yes.
Ms. Bartholomew.
Yes.
And we did get some follow-up email.
Yes.
Burkett is here. Are the issues with the track fixed?
Tell the
All
board
little-
what you did, but just so the board knows, we are actually having another walkthrough
Okay.
with the track and and all that, and people tomorrow.
Oh, good.
So we're going to
Okay.
follow up, but I did want Mr. Burkett to report verbally what it is that he did, because I was a little confused when I first read his email. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
and I just want to, I'll turn it over to you in a second. The reason it concerns me is I know with tracks, we think, oh, it's a long time till the track season, but it gets cold here, it gets snowy here, so there really isn't a lot of time to address these things. Go ahead, Mr. Burkett, I'll let you. Would you go over it? You have the coaches with you? I know sometimes the perception of things is different, you know, been on both ends, I understand. Yeah, got it, okay, thank you.
I just wanted to acknowledge something real quick. So, because my phone has literally been blowing up all day about the stuff going around in Liberty Valley, and I just want to acknowledge how scary that was, probably for most parents, to have that happen. And that I think Dr. Mathias did a really good job of trying to communicate in a reasonable and an intelligent way. But I know for a lot of people it was still very, very scary, and that we will sort of, I know the district will continue to be committed to improving the way that we communicate and the things that we say to reassure parents when there are things that are difficult or scary for them. And I just sort of want to acknowledge that, because I know it was frightening even for my wife and myself. So, and we'll continue to try to do better, making sure that we communicate in ways that are useful to you guys.
I have one more thing. Mr. Mathias, I appreciate your presentation. You and I have had a lot of discussions about career pathways in the past. I've always said I don't dislike the program. But a couple things I did want to point out. One of them is common ground. The 8-period day,
Yep.
I think puts us at a disadvantage, not having it, whether we're career pathways or not, because of the lack of progression kids can make through. So if we can go to an 8-period day, I think it'd be great. I know the challenges again. I know we shorten the day and how hard it is to get it back and how you would proportion time during the day, but it is something I hope we can consider going forward. That's number one. The second thing was that this is a district that did have career pathways, and I appreciate your presentation. It was fantastic. Went away from it here. Danville definitely didn't go all in like you did. No question about that. Marketing that you've done at Central Columbia, all the things you did with the curriculum, rigor, and relevance. Back at that point, Danville went away from career pathways, 2014. So to get back in, from my perspective, I know we've approved it, but I don't even think you can argue, and I don't think work to do. There's an awful lot, and you also did a major building project in conjunction with career pathways.
We were fortunate in that, so this kind of connects to my reports. Right. We were fortunate that we had at Central, we had debt service that was so low.
Right.
And a building that was 60 years old.
Right.
So it was like it fell perfectly into place that we not only did we put in place an academic model,
Right.
but we had the ability then to invest in a facility that we could use to implement the academic model.
Yeah.
The problem, and by the way, where we got a lot of our research from was Middletown, which is
Right.
one of the poorest school districts in the state. So it's not necessarily connected, but we were certainly fortunate to have the ability to invest in a facility concurrently within putting in place. It's funny, because when I talk about the building, what most school districts do is they build a building and then kind of open the doors and let the
Right.
kids in.
Yeah.
We designed an academic program and then a building to implement it. So we had a fortunate opportunity.
And I think here, the takeaway should be that let's not move away from the positive things that career pathways can provide, but let's do what you're telling us, and rightfully so. Let's let the new superintendent drive it. And let's understand that things are not always transferable from one district to another. Who the superintendent is and the philosophy. That's the way we can. That's all I
Academic
have.
middle, academic middle.
That's all I have to say. All right, anything else?
I'd just like to acknowledge, I think this is the first time we've had a Danville grad
Yeah,
be the superintendent of the Danville district, correct?
been a very long time. Forward to working with you, Molly. Anything else? Bias, anything else?
No.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Wait, nope, public
Wait.
comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. We need public comment at the end. Anyone else? Public comment. Thank you, Richard. It. Motion to adjourn. Got them both?
We need to vote.
Favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.